Namaste Andarki. We will begin the session with an invocation to the Divine Mother. Anandamayi Chaitanyamayi Satyamayi Parame Anandamayi Chaitanyamayi Satyamayi Parame Anandamayi Chaitanyamayi Satyamayi Parame Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Aurovindaya Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Aurovindaya Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Aurovindaya Om Tatsaviturvaram Rupam Jyotih Parasya Dhimahi Yannah Satyena Deepaye Satyena Deepaye. Good evening to one and all. Today's topic is human relations. We know that one of the most challenging areas of human existence is our relationship with the external world, especially human relationships. It is very easy to love God, but far more difficult to love man. In fact, close relationships pose even greater challenges. In fact, there is no perfect book for perfect human relationships. Nobody has written. Because there is no straitjacket formula as to how we have to behave. If we go along the path, we may have to find our own ways to perfect the relationships. Sri Aurobindo says there are 4 types of relationships. We can classify these relationships into 4 main categories corresponding to 4 principal modes of activity. They are physical, vital, mental and psychic. We know that physical contact is very compulsory within a day-to-day interactions. So to say, since it depends on the fact that we have a physical body, it inevitably occurs with those who have provided us with this body and with all those who are materially dependent on them. Neighborhood in houses, in the various means of transport and in the street, we come across many people. మనకు జన్మనిచ్చినటువంటి తల్లిదండ్రులు, sisters and brothers, then coming to vital contact, this occurs between impulses and desires which are identical or liable to combine in order to complement and heighten one another. If the other person has similar kind of a desire, a kind of an impulse, so there we also tend to create a certain kind of a vital relationship. The third one is psychic contact that occurs between converging spiritual aspirations, depending upon the aspiration of each person. There is every possibility that the two persons can have psychic contact. This occurs between converging spiritual aspirations. The next one is mental contact. This comes from similar or complementary mental capacities and affinities. So that's how this is classified into 4 categories: physical, vital, psychic and mental. In human life, we know that most of the problems that crop up is purely because of one's ego. More particularly, if ego with its desires, it likes and dislikes. What happens is that if a person has ego, it reacts everything that displeases it. Nalage, a person, obviously if he is not like that, obviously we tend to create certain kind of a disharmony. This ego always wants that certain things to be done in a particular way. If they are not done, obviously disharmony and a discord, a kind of a friction that take place between two human beings. That starts an inner storm that rises to the surface and spoils all the work including the relationship also. That's why overcoming the ego is long, slow and difficult. But Sri Aurobindo says, but one has to make an effort to dissolve the ego completely. It demands constant alertness and sustained effort. Effort is easier for someone and more difficult for others. To eradicate this ego, each person has his own way of finding it and dissolve it. Over a period of time, depending upon one's own sadhana and aspiration, the ego dissolves. That's how the relationship also improves. And we all know, Swami Vivekananda also says, you have to find Shiva in Jiva. Atmavat Sarva Bhutani. Each soul is potentially divine only. If we realize that the other person is also a portion of the divine, a spark of the divinity is there within them, normally we don't find any kind of a disturbance or ill feeling towards them, because the Shakti is one, but it manifests in different ways. Each person has his own way of expression and activity to do things. And in Letters of Yoga, Sri Aurobindo says, all the connections must be founded on a spiritual intimacy. That should be the background. Spirituality should be the background. In our yoga of transformation, throwing away of desire and attachment in life, mind and body should be aimed. What happens is that our personality is like a small bud, like a lotus bud. it unfolds one petal after the other and becomes a full-blown personality as we progress in sadhana. It all depends upon the aspiration which we have inside us. That's why it's very important to have connection to the mother and master. I mean, in a day, sometimes we, in a mundane affairs, we get ourselves involved in many other things, because the moment sometimes we sit here for some time, we feel very elated when we, hear certain talks, or when we go to some other kind of a temple and pray Lord Krishna or Ishtadevata, we feel certain kind of an enlightenment. But what happens is, the moment we go out, what happens is that we are surrounded by many other external influences and various other vital impulses. We are simply just caught. And there is every likelihood that we tend to forget the divinity. Our whole yoga is to manifesting the divinity in each and every aspect of life. The moment what happens is that these external influences try to play a prominent role and dominate the psychic wheels. When the vital comes forefront, the psychic wheels. So the constant effort has to be made that in place of this ego, we may have to make an attempt to replace it with harmony, peace and joy. If we try to imbibe and inculcate and cultivate these noble virtues, harmony, peace and joy, then we can stand as an ideal for others also, and the relationship with others also become very, very fruitful. And it's always very important that mother also says, always behave as if the mother is constantly looking at you. 24/7, day in and day out. If we keep this as our background, then everything will be perfectly fall into its own place. Then harmony with others. Harmony and not strife is the law of yogic living. Our yoga is a yoga of transformation. We have been making our own efforts for a quite long time, that we don't make an attempt to completely suppress it. Whatever we receive in the external world, we just remember and offer it to the Divine Mother, so that the Divine Mother transforms it. Rupantarikaranam. In Telugu, we call it as Rupantarikaranam. Our yoga is that only, yoga of transformation. So everything, whatever comes in our way, whether good or bad, everything, the constant remembrance and offering it at the lotus feet of the Divine Mother, one can find much perfection in one's personality. When relations are full of disharmony and when incidents occur, it would be much better for you not to take the standpoint that you are all in the right and they are all in the wrong. This is one of the reasons where what always we feel is that we are right and the other person is wrong. We know that in Vemana Padyalu, when I was a child also, in Telugu I was taught Tappulennuvaru Tama Tappulu Erugaru Vishwadabhirama Vinuravema. Before finding fault in the others, is always try to find fault within. A kind of an introspection, Atma Parishilana antame manamu. A kind of an introspection has to take place, saying that let us not dwell on the defects of others. Each person has his own way of living. So mother says that taking a such standpoint that you are all in the right and they are all in the way wrong cannot be taken. And further, mother says, better to lay stress on your own fault and not on theirs. Thus would probably lead to more harmony in your relation with others. Over and above, more conducive to your inner progress and sadhana. That really helps us to our own inner progress, not finding fault with others. Nobody is perfect in this world. We are all in the process of becoming only. Merely because I am sitting here doesn't mean that I know something else. I am just what the task that is given to me, I am just submitting at the lotus feet of the Divine Mother. So nobody is perfect in this world. We are all, sailing in a boat. And Sri Aurobindo is waiting ahead in the future for us. We are all traveling. In the process, we tend to commit many mistakes because as long as our vital impulses are always surrounded, we obviously tend to commit a lot of mistakes, but in the process, we constantly remember the Divine Mother and simply offer it to them to transform our personality and become her instrument. If such kind of a situation and disharmony, a kind of a discordant feeling if arises, it's always better to listen in a receptive silence to the other side. Why the other side is saying like that? Is there any truth in it? And if we step back without indulging in it, if we step back and think before you speak, it avoids many problems. Normally, the moment we hear something, we always, the kind of a vital impulse, always ask us to give it back immediately or say something immediately. A kind of a reply blow. So if we, adopt an attitude of stepping back and then speaking or giving a kind of a reply so softly and gently, that also solves many kind of problems and a kind of a human friction and issues. And in Sri Aurobindo's pre-Pondicherry phase also, so one of the incidents that took place in Avatar's, Lord Sri Aurobindo's and human life, when he was because all along he was a yogi all along. In pre-Pondicherry phase, what happened is this Mrinalini Devi, wife of Sri Aurobindo, and Sarojini Devi, the sister of Sri Aurobindo, they were all living together in a household circles. Normally, we know it's kind of a disturbances, disharmony takes place. So one day, what happens is the Mrinalini Devi speaks to Sri Aurobindo, saying that I am not liking the attitude of your sister, Mrinalini Devi. Obviously, to whom else she would complain? Obviously to the husband. So she complains to Sri Aurobindo. And one day, Mrinalini Devi gives an ultimatum to Sri Aurobindo. Either you instruct Sarojini to mend her ways, or else I'll take you to task. And Sri Aurobindo says, bear with it, have patience, have endurance. And later says that Mrinalini Devi, wanted Sri Aurobindo to, scold her because ego gets satisfied. So then Sri Aurobindo very softly says, but by scolding the Sarojini, do you think that she would really change her attitude? That's not the way. Again, Sri Aurobindo says that bear with it, have endurance, have patience, everything will change. These magical words of endurance and bear with it and have patience have really had a magical effect on ultimately Mrinalini Devi, and slowly the things also started changing. and there would be completely harmony between the relationship of Mrinalini Devi and Sarojini Devi at a later point of time. That's how Mrinalini Devi throughout her lifetime practiced this endurance as part of her sadhana. So therefore this endurance sometimes also helps. Obviously this kind of friction and issues also crop up between husband and wife, obviously between the parents and children. These things do crop up in day-to-day life. In such a situation, only praying and having a certain kind of an endurance and patience will slowly change certain things. Transformation obviously takes place. As long as human beings are in the habit of basing relationship with their own on physical, vital, mental contacts, that is why there is almost always discord and suffering. On the contrary, if they base their relationship on psychic contacts between soul to soul, as we have already indicated that Atmavat Sarva Bhutani. If the relationship is purely based upon the psychic contacts between soul to soul, there is a profound and lasting harmony amongst the relationships. And one more anecdote we can also take it from Sri Aurobindo's relationship with others. This is also, very beautifully explained by Manoj Da in pre-Pondicherry phase. In fact, after listening to this talk by Dr. Ramesh Bijlani from Sri Aurobindo Ashram at Delhi, immediately I thought of buying this book. Immediately I ordered after listening to the talk. This book name is Sri Aurobindo, Life and Times of the Mahayogi. This describes about pre-Pondicherry phase of Sri Aurobindo. This under the caption of A God Descended Under Curse. Once while Sri Aurobindo lived in another lodge along with Roy, Dinendra Kumar Roy was appointed by Sri Aurobindo's uncle to teach Sri Aurobindo Bangla, because he came from England, so he didn't know much about Bangla, though he was born there. But since he couldn't master that language, so Sri Aurobindo's uncle appointed Dinendra Kumar Roy to teach him Bangla. So once while Sri Aurobindo lived in another lodge along with Roy, the latter was down with what was then known as the Baroda fever, a virulent scourge. Then Roy speaks like this. There was no possibility of, because Roy was completely bedridden and Sri Aurobindo completely nursed him back to health. Then after this experience, Roy says, Dinendra Kumar Roy says, there was no possibility of any of my relatives rushing from my home in a remote village in eastern India to this faraway place to be my side and nurse me. But the way Aurobindo nursed me, in those days he was called like this, but the way Aurobindo nursed me all through the long period I lay bedridden could not have been expected of my closest kinsmen. For days together, while I ran high temperature, Aurobindo sat by my bed and nursed me, following the instructions obtained from an army doctor. Imagine a situation such a avatar sitting by the side of Dinendra Kumar Roy, and was by constantly following the instructions of an army doctor and nursed him back to health. Roy continues. but he never spoke, it's Sri Aurobindo, but he never spoke a word about his hardships or difficult to me, even indirectly. But I realized that I would not have survived the ordeal but for his sacrifice. Roy, of course, learnt about this from others. Long after he had fully recovered, Sri Aurobindo said one day, laughing, in a loose rendering of Roy's Bengali, because he was only just learning Bengali. So, in a laughing mode, Sri Aurobindo, said to Roy, Roy, you survived an ordeal remarkably indeed. The greatness of Sri Aurobindo is that he doesn't give credit to himself, having given so much of treatment sitting by his side until he recovers. Sri Aurobindo says, Roy, you survived an ordeal remarkably indeed. Terrible was that Baroda fever. Rarely it lets one escape death. But he never uttered even a word about what he did for me. అంతగనము చేసి కూడా సేవ. Sri Aurobindo never uttered even a word about what he did for me. I have never known anybody else commanding such restraint over his own word or action. Roy also records the awful heat in the summer. In fact, there was no electricity in those days in that temporary shelter. So severe was the heat at noon that the wet towel I had put on dried up in an hour. But how powerful was Aurobindo's power of tolerance? Because just now we have discussed about that endurance, that incident with the Mrinal Devi. This power of tolerance of Sri Aurobindo in those scorching heat without even a fan. So severe was the heat at noon that the wet towel I put on dried up in an hour. But how powerful was Aurobindo's power of tolerance? He never took off his shirt. I don't think he suffered the least due to the heat. I never saw him using a hand fan. Such was the power of tolerance of our dear Lord. So that's why this tolerance, endurance, patience, these really play a prominent role in building up the relationships. The examples from Sri Aurobindo also we can follow in our day-to-day life. Then, in 4 austerities, the mother says, love, knowledge, power and beauty. These are all 4 austerities. One of the greatest faculty the human being is endowed with is the faculty of speech. That's why it's always better to speak as little as possible and work as much as you can. Because we can avoid many problems. Unnecessarily, indulging any kind of an arguments and an excessive speech it always creates under kind of a human frictions and issues. So that's why mother always says, speak as less as possible, work as much as you can. In fact, this is called as a tapasya. It has to be practiced as a tapas. The speech has to be practiced as a tapas. Because we also know that whenever the situation doesn't demand for us to speak, it's always better to maintain silence. అనువుగాని చోట అధికులం అనరాదు, వారికి తెలిసే ఉంటుంది. అనువుగాని చోట అధికులం అనరాదు, కొంచెం ఉండుటెల్ల కొదువ కాదు, కొండ అద్దమందు కొంచెమై ఉండదా. దిస్ ఈస్ ఆల్సో అగైన్ వేమన శతకాలు. విశ్వదాభిరామం ఇందులో విధము. A very big mountain in front of a mirror, obviously it looks so small. That doesn't mean that the mountain has lost its sanctity and glory. No. Likewise, the situation, wherever the circumstance, is not very favorable and the situation doesn't demand us to speak, it's always better to exercise a certain kind of a restraint over speech. It's always desirable. We can avoid many kind of human frictions. And in Savitri also we have a beautiful lines: in absolute silence sleeps an absolute power. In mind silence the transcendent acts. Speak always what is necessary, and we may also have to cultivate the psychic control of speech. We also know that the Manishiki Mate Alankaram, the external, the ceremonial baths, applying this paste by going to beauty parlors and wearing very costly ornaments, these are not so lasting. What is everlasting is the faculty of speech. Manishiki Mate Alankaram. Keyuranina Bhushayanti Purusham Harana Chandra. Last time I think in one of our talks we have also discussed about this. Keyuranina Bhushayanti Purusham Harana Chandrojvala Nasnanam na. This ceremonial bath is Nasnanam na Vilepanam. Applying a Chandanam. Nalankrita Dharyate. Kshiyante Kila Bhushanani Satatam. All vanish over a period of time. Because the words or a speech is like an arrow. The moment it gets released, it's very difficult to take it back. ఒక్కసారి మాట మాట్లాడి ఆ మనిషిని హర్ట్ చేసిన తర్వాత, even if you say sorry, but it remains there. You have just released it in the air and that has reached that person. Obviously it hurts. We cannot take it back. It's like an arrow. Physical arrow అయితేనేమో if you release it, it hits. It can be wounded with a kind of a medicine. But మాట సంబంధించింది స్పీచ్ మాట్లాడిన తర్వాత it's very difficult to take it back. So mother says that it's better to exercise a great restraint over one's speech. And mother also says that always speak very gently and softly, because what happens is that our words can create harmony in a troubled mind. If a person is undergoing certain kind of a trauma or any kind of a ill health, a soothing word, very very comfortable and a very loving word, having a certain kind of a deep bonding for that person, having a certain kind of a feeling that that person should prosper. If we tell a small word to him very softly and gently, if he is even though undergoing a lot of turmoil inside his mind and a troubled mind, these soothing words create a kind of a harmony. Or what happens is that if we speak very harshly, this also will create a trouble in that harmonious mind. Two-way. If we help them, if we speak softly and gently, it creates a harmony in that person. Everything gets stabilized, and he will also enjoy that harmony, peace and joy. And if that other person has kind of leading in a harmonious life and a harmonious mind, but the other person is having a certain kind of vital impulses, agitation, any kind of harsh words, this will create certain kind of ripples of disturbance in that harmonious mind. So it's always better to speak the words which are very harmonious, and that should emanate always love, peace and joy. And one more faculty, one is required to develop is a faculty of listening. Most of the times, because the major problems always get solved by properly listening to the problem. In connection with the establishment of, I think, a Bengal college at Baroda, one person gives around 1 lakh in those days at the disposal of Sri Aurobindo to utilize that amount for that National Bengal College. But Sri Aurobindo was more interested in utilizing that money for freedom struggle. Then the person, I think whether that person who gave that money for disposal at Sri Aurobindo or some other person, wanted to convey that message to Sri Aurobindo, saying that that amount of 1 lakh to be utilized for this National Bengal College, and that person comes and says to Sri Aurobindo and goes on saying for about maybe about 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Sri Aurobindo, with a quiet mind, with a quietude, in a receptive silence, Sri Aurobindo listens to that person for about 20-30 minutes without even obstructing him. What happens is, if a person, presenting his own views and try to convince the others, and in fact, if not interrupting is a very good quality, because he is speaking and we are listening. But if a person is presenting a particular point of view opposite to your view, sometimes we don't feel like staying back. Then and there itself, our vital impulses obviously say, no, we should give an immediate reply, no, whatever because we don't have a power of a tolerance, a kind of an endurance, and also kind of a patience to listen until he completes this. Then we always tend to give immediate reply. So a person who is presenting a point of view opposite to your view, and even in such circumstance also, if you maintain a certain kind of a step back attitude and allow the other person to complete this one, that is also the greatest faculty. And Sri Aurobindo listens to for about 20 to 30 minutes, and Sri Aurobindo gives I think an half-minute reply to his long lecture. Then agrees, yes, whatever you say is absolutely right. I think if that amount could be spent for that, I think the very real and useful purpose will be served. So this listening skill is also very, very an important faculty besides this faculty of speech, but one may have to find one's own path to perfect this kind of a faculty. Then coming to criticism, Mother says, don't dwell much on defects of others. It is not helpful. Keep always quiet and peace in the attitude. We know that we are not finding the unity in uniformity. We are just finding the unity in diversity. So keep your heart beats absolutely quiet. Obviously, if a certain kind of a incident happen or any kind of a incident take place, and then when there is a presentation of point of view between two persons, then we tend to face certain kind of a criticism. In such a circumstances, what one is required to do is to keep our heartbeats absolutely quiet, and through that there is a very likelihood that we get static power. And always we may also have to remember that the criticism really sometimes helps us to progress if we take it in a right way. Why the other person is taking in such a manner. And we also think from the standpoint of view that we are not always right and the other person is always wrong. No. So if we deeply contemplate over such aspects and try to take that criticism for our own benefit and advancement of sadhana and transform ourselves, that will not bother us if we take that criticism in right spirit. And coming to hatred, this hatred injures both parties, it helps none. Jealousy, asuya, dvesham, these are all really completely injures both parties and it helps none. Lower vital takes a mean and petty pleasures in picking out fault of others, thereby hampers one's progress. It is the lower vital which enjoys so much pleasure in entertaining such fights. So we have to constantly remember the mother and offer it. That should be our mantra, because our password is one. Our password is aspiration. Through that password aspiration, we always constantly remember the mother. That's why it's always better in a throughout the day. If you take out at least 2 or 3 minutes and silently concentrate deep within and pray the Divine Mother to manifest her Shakti within and be with us, that also really helps us a lot to get in touch with the mother. Then men are always more able to criticize sharply the work of others and call them how to do things or what not to do than skillful to avoid the same mistakes themselves. That is why in yoga one has always to look and see what is in oneself and become more and more consciousness. If you listen what others say and base your actions on satisfying their ideas, how would you keep the right attitude which can support alone you in work? It is for the mother we have to work. Because what happens is that based on the ideas of others, if we go on shifting our own consciousness without having any kind of our own central idea, so that there will not be any perfection. It is ultimately for the mother we have to work, to find her in yourself through work, not to protect yourself from criticism of others. It is most of the time mixed with imaginations, inferences, illogical, false interpretations. It is a disease of the vital aided by the physical mind, which makes itself an instrument of the pleasure taken in this barren and harmful pursuit of the vital. So this practice of listening also helps a lot. And unless sometimes what happens is that unless we practically lead a life, sometimes we may not be in a position to give advice to others also. Unless we practice it, it's very difficult to give an advice. What happens is once a small boy, he's fond of, some of you may know this story. When Gandhiji is there at Sabarmati Ashram, one boy who is fond of very sweets, and his mother takes that boy to Gandhiji and wanted Gandhiji to tell this boy not to take sweets. Then immediately that pradhana after 6 p.m, this boy, this mother of this boy tells Gandhiji, please Gandhiji instruct him not to take sweets. Gandhiji tells, you come and meet me after 3 days. After 3 days again both boy and the mother come to Gandhiji, and the Gandhiji then says, बच्चा ये ठीक नहीं है, अभी ऐसा नहीं खाने का है, these are all not good for your health, take moderately but don't take too many sweets, it's not good for health. Then the mother asked Gandhiji, when we came 3 days back, why Gandhiji you didn't instruct this boy not to take it? Then Gandhiji's beautiful reply is that I am fond of sweets, I also take many sweets, as long as I am taking. Why should I tell? Nenu cheppalenu because nenu anarhudni. When I am not following it, why should I say to that boy? First of all, I should practice it for myself. For continuously for a period of 3 years, I practiced and exercised a lot of restraint in taking sweets. Now I am eligible to tell that boy not to take the sweets. So this kind of examples also help us. I mean, when we play the role of an advisor. Then coming to criticism, we have dealt with it. Then comparison. Each one in this world is unique. Nalaga meerundaleru, meelaga neenundaleru. Each person has his own talent, innate qualities unnai. Different Shaktis each person manifests. And the paths are different. We are all moving in a single direction. Ekam Sat Bahuda, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadante. That means truth is one, but the sages call it by various names. The paths are different. Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, different paths are there. Like various rivers ultimately go and merge in the ocean. There are many paths. So each one finds his own path. So that doesn't mean that his path is wrong and our path is right. Each one has his own lesson to learn, his own work to do. And he must concern himself with that, not with superior or inferior progress of work of others in comparison with himself. When in ignorance one speaks ill of others, he debases his consciousness and degrades his soul. It's very dangerous. Mother says, if we speak ill of others, if a person is not in front of us or when we speak, sometimes we indulge in this kind of practice. It happens because as long as we are there in the vital world, this happens. And mother says that if you speak ill of others, and bad about others, more particularly in their absence, we do not know, it may hurt or it may not hurt. But mother says that he debases his consciousness. It amounts to degrading his own consciousness and degrades his soul. So we may have to keep that in mind with regard to this. Then Taittiriya Upanishadu one beautifully says, ఎంతకాలమైతే మనము దాని యందు ఉంటున్నామో అది జ్ఞానం అంటారు. ఒక విషయము, ఒక అవగాహన, ఒక పరిజ్ఞానము, దాని మీద సంబంధించి if we focus upon a particular thing, like if we are sitting here and meditating upon the God, we are constantly getting ourselves tuned to the divine vibrations and we are all feeling very elated and happy. As long as a person is in that state of mind, it is called జ్ఞాన. ఎన్ని క్షణాలైతే దాన్ని మర్చిపోతామో దాని పేరు మృత్యువు లేక అజ్ఞానం అంటారు. వెరీ బ్యూటిఫుల్లీ సెడ్ ఇన్ దిస్ తైత్రీయ ఉపనిషత్. దాని అందు మనం ఉంటున్నంతసేపు ఆ జీవుడు పరబ్రహ్మ అవుతాడంట. సో ద మూమెంట్స్ when we sit in meditation or when we get tuned to ourselves with the external world, more particularly having a divine consciousness and extending our speech, kani, acts, manasa, vacha, karmana, whatever we do, if we express the divinity, manifesting the divinity, that itself, those alone, those seconds, those minutes, those days alone only counts, and they are regarded as jnana. Then coming to human relationship in yoga, Sri Aurobindo says personal relationship is not part of yoga. When one has union with divine, then only can there be a true spiritual relation with others. So it's always better to keep the mother as a background consciousness. It's always very important to keep the mother as a background consciousness. Always in whatever the activity that we do, when we speak, when we listen, when we indulge in any kind of a activity, and that practice and that kind of a poise or state may come if we constantly remember the Divine Mother. Like such kind of a exercise that all of us can, take out at least 2 or 3 minutes or 1 minute daily or 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or depending upon availability of time to a particular person. In a day, if you are able to take out 2 గంటలకు ఒకసారి, for every 2 hours, minimum taking out 2 minutes or 3 minutes, or for 6 hours ఒకసారి, because it always helps us to get in tune ourselves with the divinity, so that slowly the transformation takes place. రూపాంతరీకరణ మన లోపల చాలా unopened petals. With this divine influence, with the constant remembrance and the mother, those petals slowly open up one after the other. Then there will be flowering of a personality. The personality becomes like a full-blown lotus. It not only helps us to elevate our conscious levels to conscious to higher levels, but not only that, we can also set up as an example for others by emanating so much love, peace and joy. It has a very positive ripples and impact over others' life too, so that we can build up good human relationships. It is as the love of the divine grows that the other things cease to trouble the mind, because in day-to-day life many other things always constantly trouble the mind. If we constantly develop the love towards the divinity, God, proportionately whatever the troubles that are there in the mind also start diminishing and vanishing. So it is the love of the divine which is required to be grown from time to time. And it is the harmony and not strife is the law of yogic living. When one enters the spiritual life, the family ties, bonds which belong to the ordinary nature fall away. One becomes indifferent to the old things. The beauty is that in the backdrop of this spirituality and the guidance of the mother and the master, we perceive the things completely in a different way. than an ordinary human being, because we always getting in touch with their readings and beautiful lines from Savitri, and because we know that in Savitri Sri Aurobindo says, all is too little that the world can give. Its power and knowledge are the gifts of time and cannot fill the spirit's sacred thirst. ఈ ప్రపంచం ఇచ్చేటువంటి పవర్ అండ్ నాలెడ్జ్ ఆర్ ద గిఫ్ట్స్ ఆఫ్ టైమ్, all is too little that the world can give. This cannot fill the spirit's sacred thirst. అంటే ఈ స్పిరిట్కు ఉన్నటువంటి ఆ తృష్ణని సరిపోవు దానికి. And in the as long as we go on the path, we obviously get perfection, paripurnata. Obviously one man's perfection still can save the whole world. This is also again in Savitri. One man's perfection still can save the whole world. And one more beautiful thing is that because the human frictions and the issues come when we don't tolerate the other person, we don't accept them. Sometimes we may have to accept as they are, that's all. Accept the people as they are. One day or the other, they will also have a chance and they will also get in touch with noble virtues. Probably the time has not come for them. So it's always to avoid such a kind of ripples or kind of a turmoil in the mind, why the other person is not changing. And if we accept the people as they are, then there is also so much harmony, and we can only pray for their progress. And one more thing is that friendship affection is not excluded from yoga. It is not encouraged by the mother. Amongst sadhaks, goodwill you should have, but attachment is an hindrance. Attachment is always an hindrance, mother says. You can have goodwill for everyone. And one more thing is, with regard to this friendship, mother says, friend is not one who encourages you to come down to your lowest level. నీ ఉన్న చైతన్య స్థాయి నుంచి ఇంకా కిందికి దిగజార్చేటువంటి పనులు చేయమని చెప్పే ఎవరైతే మిత్రుడు ఉన్నాడో అతను మిత్రుడు కాదు. He says, mother says, the friend is not one who encourages you to come down to your lowest level. He encourages you to do foolish things along with him, or fall into bad ways with him, or one who comments on you for all the nasty things you do. And mother always gives a caution that avoid a person who strengthens evil propensities in you. Obviously we can sense it. If a person, obviously, in a holy company, we draw a lot of inspiration and benefit. But if we ultimately come across and sense and perceive, saying that this person is strengthening evil propensities in me, it's always better to avoid such person. There are many other beautiful things around us, we can focus upon it. And there is no question of any other. That's why mother always says, always be happy, always laugh, just enjoy. One sadhak goes to the mother and asks, mother, you have been giving so much to me, I am not giving anything back, returning anything back to you. What do you want me to give, mother? Mother simply says, just be happy. That is the greatest gift that you are giving it to me. Always laugh, be happy, and be simple. And mother always says, when you are truly changed, everything around you will also be changed. Obviously the divine grace is there, and the remedy is instead of saying that is bad, and this is not favorable, that is not favorable. We always keep complaining in life. మనకు వస్తూ ఉంటాయండి డే టు డే ప్రాబ్లమ్స్. ఆబ్వియస్లీ ఇది బాగాలేదు, అది బాగాలేదు. దిస్ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ దిస్ ఆల్వేస్ గో ఆన్ క్రియేటింగ్ సర్టన్ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ ఎ ట్రబుల్ ఇన్ అవర్ మైండ్. Mother says the remedy for that is, instead of saying that is bad, this is not favorable, that is favorable, always constant introspect yourself. Atma parishilana cheskuntu always say, my surrender is not perfect. It is on that aspect we may have to focus. Probably I am not sincere in my approach. My surrender is not complete. If we constantly contemplate over it and take a right attitude, and that's how one can also truly change, and the divine grace is always upon us. And whenever we get chance also, we always try to listen to a very wise man. We go to a very distant place to listen, because the conversation with a wise man in 5 minutes, ento conversation chesina kuda, ento oka 5 నిమిషాలు గడిపినా kuda, people travel very long distances to, even if that, even మహాత్ములు వాళ్ళు మాట్లాడలేకపోయినా, even 2-3 minutes వాళ్ళతో స్పెండ్ చేసినా, they communicate so much power through their silence. So such a holy company also helps us a lot to change our attitude. And conversation with a wise man in 5 minutes is equal to 5 years of studies. So that's also helps us a lot to change our own attitude and to have a peaceful and happy relationship with others. And thank you and deep gratitude to all of you for listening to the talk. Let us close the talk with a moment of silence to the Divine.